Welcome to the Lean Blog Podcast. Visit our website at www.leanblog.org. Now, here's your host, Mark Graban.
Hi, this is Mark Graban. Welcome to episode 172 of the podcast for April 17th, 2013. My guest today is Jerry Bussell. He was previously a guest on episode 137, and today we're talking about his recent book titled Anatomy of a Lean Leader. I just saw Jerry talk about the book yesterday here at the AME, Association for Manufacturing Excellence Spring Conference here in San Antonio, and I'm certainly thrilled to have him as a guest here on the show. Jerry talks about how he defines a lean leader and why President Abraham Lincoln fits into that description. He also talks about some of the modern CEOs he would put on the list of great lean leaders, including one who might be a bit of a surprise, the owner of the NFL's Jacksonville Jaguars. So in the episode, Jerry will explain what it is in that NFL owner's business background that makes him an outstanding lean leader. So you can visit the website for Jerry's book at busselllean.com, or to find links to buy it and to learn more, you can go to leanblog.org/172. Well, joining us once again on the podcast is Jerry Bussell. Jerry, thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it, Mark.
Well, we're talking today about your brand new book, Anatomy of a Lean Leader. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the book, and in doing so, how do you define a lean leader?
Yeah, I think the book was really an opportunity for me to reflect on what I've learned about leadership and to be able to share it with everybody else. And one of the things about the book is that in studying the Toyota leaders and other leaders that I thought were very good at leading lean transformations, there were certain character traits that I discovered, and I tried to hone in on those character traits, and then I saw a parallel between the behaviors and character traits of our 16th president, Abraham Lincoln. So it gave me somebody who, over a long period of time, it's like a principle, timeless and universal, the behaviors of leadership. And so it gave me somebody to really use as a model for me to model my behavior, and I wanted to share that with others as well. And also, I took 10 CEOs from various industries and all that, and tried to take some stories from them and show how they demonstrate these character traits.
Yeah.
In terms of
what are a couple of those traits?
Well, I think the number one trait really is to be purposeful, and I think it starts with that. What are you trying to do as a leader? What's really important? For example, one of the companies that I work with is Underwriters Laboratories, and their purpose is to make the world a safer place. So that really gives you something to focus on, and your true north is that. And then some of the other character traits, like being respectful of people, and also being a continuous learner and a problem solver. Those are traits that are very important in an environment where you're trying to implement continuous improvement and at the same time show respect for people in achieving your purpose.
Now, I want to definitely kind of talk more about Abraham Lincoln, but before we get into that, one question: when you say character traits, how much of that leadership capability or those traits are just sort of inherent versus what can be learned if somebody reflects and says, "Well, gosh, I don't have some of those traits"?
Well, I think it's really a personal commitment to really focus on principles and make sure that you start with the principles of, for example, integrity, and you're anchored in that, and then off of that, that helps you to take the behaviors and do them in the correct fashion. All of these things can be learned. I think it's really a matter of commitment. And an understanding what your true purpose is, and then really understanding these behaviors and committing to continually work on a personal level, personal continuous improvement to get better and better in terms of how you behave in each one of these character traits.
And we'll hopefully later talk about some of the modern CEOs, but I think it's really fascinating. Abraham Lincoln is the picture on the front of the book. I'm curious, and I think the listeners would be curious to hear the thought process for seeing the connections between Lincoln, as president, of course, 150 years ago, and modern lean leaders. When did you discover those connections? What are those connections?
Well, it was about 7 years ago. In terms of my efforts to become a better leader, I decided that I was going to take 10 days and go over to Japan and really try to learn more about Toyota, Honda, and some of the really successful companies, as well as really study their leaders. And when I discovered that the leaders were different than many of the leaders that I had worked with over the years, and had some character traits in terms of their humility and the way they served people and the way they went about getting involved in problems and trying to coach people that was different than I was accustomed to. And when I was flying back on the plane, I was home. I was coming across the Pacific, and it dawned on me that many of the character traits that I saw and the behaviors that I saw of the leaders in Japan reminded me of a book I'd read many years ago called Lincoln on Leadership. So when I got home, I picked up the book and I said, wow, this is amazing. So many, to a T, so many of the different character traits and behaviors that I observed in Japan were the behaviors that and the traits that Lincoln had honed and committed to as a person, and that really contributed to his effectiveness as our 16th president. Probably dealing with one of the greatest problems was really the country being pulled apart and trying to pull the union back together.
So when we look at some of those attributes, I mean, does Lincoln kind of fit that list of traits to a T, including humility? I don't know much about Lincoln, really. Yeah,
no, he does. I mean, he was a very humble person. He came from very modest means. He had a true purpose. When you think of it, the purpose was really to preserve the Union. And when you think about respect for people, I mean, here's somebody that would have people, he'd constantly get in that public bath, having people come to the White House, and he had an open door policy during certain hours, and he'd meet with anybody. And even his staff, in the cabinet, he would go see them. He wouldn't have them come see him. He would show them that respect to go to where they were. And he was very consistent in the way he treated people. He really did treat people with respect. He listened to them. And we think of him as a learner. He was a continuous learner. I mean, he developed all of these skills through study, through personal experience, honed a lot of his skills as a country lawyer, but was a real student of problem solving, and he studied Euclidean logic to hone those skills. So he was pretty much a learn by doing person and gained his experience. So. And I think his problem-solving skills were terrific because he had this real skill of looking at a problem very objectively and taking all the emotions out. And that was the secret to his success in terms of in a lot of areas, in a lot of making decisions and do things. The other thing is he wasn't afraid to fail, much like the Toyota leaders. He failed a lot, but he learned every time he failed, and he built upon that knowledge to become more effective. And, I think one of the final attributes I talk about is being courageous. And clearly, with what the president was up against, he had to have great courage because the abolitionists wanted him to free the slaves. And, he was dealing with people, his critics and all, and obviously his critics in the South. But he was constantly criticized, but he was going to do the right thing that he thought was best to achieve his overall purpose, which was to preserve the Union.
Mm-hmm. And you talk back to the idea of humility. I'm just thinking back. There was a really excellent book called Toyota by Toyota that came out about a year ago. And the first 2 chapters of the book were really on nothing but humility and leading with humility and how important that is within the culture of the plants. In Georgetown, Kentucky, and it must trace all the way back, I would presume, to the culture of Toyota back in Japan. I mean, it seems like humility and integrity, of all those different traits, it seems like to some extent, or at least by the time you get to be an adult and a manager, maybe you have integrity or you don't. If you lose your humility, maybe it can grow back if if you try enough. But can you think of some examples, particularly on the front of leading with humility? Any of the modern CEOs that you profile within the book, is there one or that stands out in particular?
I think what really struck me was, and obviously, a little bit of a disclaimer. I do work as an advisor for Underwriters Laboratories, but really Keith Williams. He's probably one of the people that is just so humble. He's somebody that really easily admits his failures. And an example would be he sends out a email every week to all the employees, and he's done this since he's been at the helm for 8 years consistently. And he talks about what he's seeing, expectations, but he also talks about his own failures, things that worked out and things that he learned. And he wants to share that with people in terms of where he thinks the organization could do better. But he also talks about things that he would do better and what he learned when things didn't work out. And to me, I think that's a great example of somebody who is not afraid to be totally transparent with people, and it makes people feel more comfortable when they're dealing with somebody that has that humility. I also found him as a person too that struck me is that although he's got great business acumen, he's quick to admit. He said, "I really don't know anything about that. I really would like to learn about that." He listens in a humble fashion to try to understand, rather than tell you everything he knows. So. He's an individual that I really respect because of he's very consistent in that behavior. He's not talking about himself. He never talks about what he achieved. He talks about what the organization achieves. He never takes personal credit for things. He credits the organization. And if there's a failure, he also takes responsibility. So I think those are the kind of traits that I also saw in the Toyota leaders, and I've learned about and I've observed in the Toyota leaders and other great leaders in organizations that have been very successful over a long period of time in implementing continuous improvement in the right fashion.
Yeah. Now, who are some of the other of the modern CEOs that you profile or interview in the book?
Well, one is pretty interesting because he just bought the Jacksonville Jaguars, and that's Shad Khan. And Shad Khan, if you've read Lean Thinking, you can recall he was one of the first suppliers that Toyota worked with to try to help their suppliers. And he is really interesting because when we interviewed him, his depth of knowledge of the Toyota production system and his passion about the system and what it meant to his business and how he was able to take a business 17 years ago that was doing $50 million and now it's doing $3 billion. And he credits it to the whole approach to continuous improvement and showing respect for people and trying to create problem solvers throughout his organization. And, he too said, failure, he said he learned more from failure than he did from success, but he built upon that. So that, to me, was somebody that I was somewhat surprised at his depth, his knowledge. I mean, he was bringing up Japanese cartoons that he learned from, and rarely do you get a CEO that engages at that level that has that depth of knowledge. And, it's been translated into tremendous success for him in his business career and with his business.
Well, you've just made a really, at least in my mind, a really interesting team out of the Jacksonville Jaguars, which is your, I don't know if you call it hometown team, but you're certainly
right.
A fixture there in the Jacksonville Lean community. Have you had a chance to talk with him about? I mean, I'm sure that once you think Lean, you can't turn that off. Now he's got this altogether different business challenge of an NFL team that hasn't had a lot of success in recent years. Have you had a chance to talk with him about how he's applying that?
I haven't really talked to him in person. I will be probably in April when he'll be back in town for the draft. And but I have been working with the Jacksonville Jaguars, not on the football team, but in applying continuous improvement to some of their non-football operations. And it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. And obviously, they know what's important to the owner, and so they had an interest in learning about it, and they're actually applying it in areas and beginning their journey. So that's really been kind of neat to see that. I don't know if it's been applied to any other sports franchise. I haven't read about it, but it is kind of neat to see that happening there, and it'll be interesting to see how getting Shad Khan. He's going to talk to the business community, 50 to 60 CEOs in, I think, May or June, and share his success. I think it's really going to help us to get other CEOs and leaders really to understand the power of this leadership approach and what it can mean to their business in terms of delivering value to their customers and also achieving the results that they want to achieve in the right way with their companies and organizations.
And is there, not to make you pick a favorite, but is there another CEO that you profiled that had kind of maybe a surprising lesson or something that was even new to you about lean leadership with all of the experience that you have?
I think one of the things that one guy that who's really been very committed to it, I really have tremendous respect for too, is the sheriff of Jacksonville, John Rutherford. I introduced him to lean on a tour of a Medtronic facility, and he got it right away. And he's really stayed the course over the last, I guess, 9 years. But what really surprised me was that he had gone beyond applying this to his organization internally, but he was out there in the community creating these sheriff advisory councils, 19 of them, to go and to teach people how to solve problems and facilitate that process throughout the Jacksonville community. So he really has done something that I didn't anticipate, that he would take it and really spread it so far within the community. And it's really been great because he's been able to leverage the resources of people within the community to solve problems right within the community rather than the traditional way of policing. So that has been very effective. He's had a lot of success to do it, and he's continuing to really champion that and try to proliferate it through the community to get everybody involved in solving some of the problems of crime within the community. And so that to me was something that I hadn't seen before and I hadn't anticipated from a leadership standpoint.
Yeah, and I talked to, at least he was with the department at the time. I believe he retired, Lieutenant Randy Russell, back in podcast
Correct.
Episodes 51 and 60. Really fascinating to chat with him a couple years ago about at least what was going on. I mean, this was back in 2008. Oh my gosh, 5 years ago. Can you tell us a little bit more? I mean, it sounds like the sheriff's department and
it's an elected position, and obviously last time I don't know what his approval rating was, but it's 70 or 80%. It's way up there because of what he's been able to do in terms of the improvements, and he credits lean as a very important strategy and one of the ways he's been really able to achieve a lot of success in terms of the outcomes that he's been able to gain through improving processes. But one of the things that he's done is he really wants this to be something that will be sustainable well after he leaves office. He's in his third term now, and he probably will not seek another term. So what he did was he really embedded the expectations, the training, the development, and continuous improvement within his whole HR area. So it's really in the development plans of the people within his organization that they need these skills, and they need to, and in terms of their objectives, they're expected to participate in events, and they're expected to continue to accelerate the process within their specific areas and work together to try to help out in other areas within the sheriff's overall area of responsibility. So to me, this is really getting embedded. It's going to be very difficult, even with an elected office, to undo a lot of the things that have been implemented in terms of the methodology and the plans, because the organization only is learning, they only know one way to do things, and that's to really go through it with problem solving and continuous improvement and using the scientific method. So the nice part is many times a leader will leave an organization and you're so dependent on the person at the top. I think he's really been able to embed this in his organization, and actually, his particular the sheriff's department was recognized as the most outstanding member of the Jacksonville Lean Consortium last year, and I'm actually going there to to be part of presenting that award to the sheriff tomorrow. And he knows his stuff. He's excited about it, and he sees the tremendous impact. So that's what's really terrific to see, that this thing will live on well beyond what Sheriff Rutherford's term in office.
Yeah, and that's such a great sign of the culture really being transformed, that it's become, the practices and methods and ideas have been so embedded in the culture that it maybe becomes resistant to change in a good way, in terms of people are going to hold on to things that work, things that have made their work life more engaging and more rewarding. That seems like a really good sign.
Right.
Now, we got a few. I was going to also say to the listeners, we did a previous episode, number 137, where Jerry and I talked more about the Jacksonville Lean Consortium, if you'd like to hear our previous discussion on that. Now, maybe talk just a few minutes about healthcare before we wrap up. You also talked to Dr. John Toussaint, who was the former CEO of ThedaCare, for this book, correct?
Correct. Yes, I did.
So, what are and you've been working? You're a close colleague of the world's first lean dentist, Sammy Bawry, down there in Jacksonville. What are some of the things that you're seeing in terms of lean leadership in healthcare?
Well, I think there's a real appetite for it. I think that when we work with the Mayo Clinic as part of the consortium, and Nemours Children's Hospital, and the largest children's hospital in the country, they're in, and they're really looking to, they understand the tools and they're beginning to implement the systems, but I think they're well recognizing the real X factor is developing the leaders to behave in the correct fashion. And so that, to me, is a big area that they all are looking towards, and that's what we see as a real limiting factor. People are looking for leaders that are going to really serve the organization, and that they're going to put the organization and they're going to put people before themselves. And so what I'm seeing is a tremendous need to develop those type of leaders. And it's not only in healthcare, I think it's throughout the whole lean movement. And but we have more, and there's been a lot of interest in the book, and at least locally in the healthcare community. We're just starting to promote the book nationally, but we've been, for the first few months, really focusing on Jacksonville. And I'm actually going to Flagler Hospital. They want to meet me, and that's down towards St. Augustine, and they're talking about joining the consortium. And they want to learn more about the leadership. How do they develop the type of leaders that will behave in the correct fashion so that they can not only implement, but really sustain and be able to accelerate the implementation of continuous improvement, and the leaders that will be able to galvanize everybody throughout the organization in a fashion that they're able to really get their whole organization, everyone, everywhere, every day. I think, as Bruce Hamilton, one of my friends, says, involved. You don't want some people. So, and that's a big change, in terms of leadership. People have been very successful one way, but to be a lean leader, as I laid out with the 10 character traits, some people, they have a lot of work in certain areas if they want to be truly effective.
Well, thanks, Jerry, for sharing a little bit about your new book, Anatomy of a Lean Leader. What are some of the best ways people can find the book to learn more?
I think right now we don't. Yeah, it's on Amazon, so you can order it on Amazon, and electronic copy will be out within a month. We're a little slow on that, but if you just go on Amazon, you can order it on Amazon. That's the easiest way to get to it. And hopefully, and one of the things I did just to finish up is I put 5 Socratic questions at the end of each chapter on the character trait. So this isn't the spectator sport. You have to engage. You have to really kind of challenge yourself so you can learn by kind of answering these questions and reflecting on where you are in terms of these character traits, which I think are vital to being successful as a lean leader.
And people can find you online, busselllean.com?
Yeah, busselllean.com. They can, whatever I've written, there's been several interviews I've done on TV and some radio work and all that, and also some articles that I've written. And my goal is just to share things. I think, just to finish up, I would say that, Jim Womack always told us in the lean community to share, to steal shamelessly. And what I'd add to that is we need to share generously. And this is my opportunity to try to do that, is share what I've learned, my successes and failures, and those of others, so that people can build upon that in terms of becoming effective lean leaders.
Well, Jerry, thanks again for taking time to talk. It's a pleasure as always, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Okay, thanks a lot, Mark. Bye.
Thanks for listening. This has been the Lean Blog Podcast. For lean news and commentary updated daily, visit www.leanblog.org. If you have any questions or comments about this podcast, email Mark at leanpodcast@gmail.com.